Bushes just to have.
Yeah. It's double the size.
Because there were a few.
Did I tell you Jim Fipper is fighting us on right turn only for Roman Joe's?
Terrific if we wanted to, but then we're.
If you just have to have some place to live.
Something planning board.
All right, good evening. The hour is 6 p.m.
Having arrived, I'll call to order this regular meeting of the Finance Organization and Personnel Committee. The meeting is being televised live on Channel 13-02. The video is also posted on the city website by the end of the next business day, barring any technical difficulties. Anyone wishing to view a copy of the agenda and supporting materials will find it on the city website. If you're in the audience tonight, you may access the agenda from any mobile device. Copies of the printed agenda are available in the wall pockets just as you enter the meeting room. To receive electronic copies of future agenda packets, please go to the homepage and subscribe to the city meetings email list. The public and other city councilors will be recognized to ask questions and make comments on the agenda item under discussion. After being recognized, all remarks are to be made through the chair. I will not recognize an individual a second time until everyone who wishes has had a chance to speak. Once a motion has been made and seconded, only the committee members and the public may speak. Councilors in attendance will have an opportunity at the next council meeting. Anyone who wishes to address the committee is asked to go to one of the microphones in the room and identify themselves by name and address prior to speaking. And written comments will be accepted at the city clerk's office until Tuesday at 1 p.m. So we have an agenda of 3 items, starting with Parks and Rec.
Mr. Chair, just for a moment, just out of the sake of transparency, I do just want to remind the committee that I had helped originally bring forward the disc golf part of the disc golf and dog park renovation for Wheelock, and I had been recused when they were separate competing pieces. But since they've been working jointly, I don't believe I need to recuse myself at this point. So if there's no problems with the committee, I'll stay seated here.
You good?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Andy Bohannon, Parks, Recreation, Facilities Director. So before you tonight is the opportunity for the city to enter into an agreement with DuBois and King for the services of designing a concept plan for what was known as the Wheelock Park Campground. This would be back in October of 2021. 2 groups, as Councilor Lake suggested, one for the dog park and one for the disc golf group, came forward looking to utilize the campground for their purposes. And through a process, we came back to you and suggested that we have, through a former capital improvement program for the repurposing of the campground, we had some funding available which would allow for a conceptual design to be done. And then this will give both groups the opportunity to have a public input and a process of the design, as well as giving estimated costs for construction. So we know a rough estimate for the dog park. Our estimates are fairly old when we had done it originally in different sites. And then the disc golf, we had some proposals for costs from that particular group, but through engineering services, we'll have a more accurate cost for each group to go out and fundraise to then bring back to the city for their amenity. And this will also give us an opportunity to see if both can really coexist safely, or it would be one or the other moving forward. And at that time, we'll be bringing that back to the council for that direction. But this will give us the authorization to bring in DuBois and King and begin the process.
So I would like the committee to support this request and move this process forward. I do think that this will provide an opportunity to meet 2 needs in our community and serve some interests. But I do want to alert the council and remind you that there was a letter submitted by Councilor Lake, Workman, and Williams that recommended considering a homeless campground or a campground for the unhoused. And if you were to consider that, I assume this is one of the locations you would look at. And before we continue to expend money on what we think is the direction for this campground, I just wanted to remind you of that.
Yeah, I just have a question. So when you do a request for qualifications, where do you post? How do you engage people that would fulfill the request?
So we work with our purchasing department, and Public Purchase is the name of the software that we use. And so all the firms, the larger firms, and even smaller firms, they register through the city website. And anytime there's a RFP, RFQ, any type of services that we go out for bid, they get notified, and they would review it. And that's why we give 30 days, so they download the application, they have the time to write their proposal and submit within a time frame. It allows us also the ability to see who has downloaded the applications, to find out where we are in the process. So if 2 weeks in, nobody's downloaded any information, we can start calling different firms and making them aware of certain things. In this particular case, there's a lot of larger firms like DuBois and King. You have Weston and Sampson's out. A lot of the engineering firms all saw the proposal, and they just chose. The work right now for them, especially at this level, is they have a ton on their plate with all of the different funding coming through. So having one opportunity from DuBois and King, a very qualified service in this field, certainly would be able to provide that for us.
Well, you answered my question, because I have concerns that only one person bidded on it, but it sounds like, from what you're saying, there's so much work to go around that they're get to pick and choose. So, all right, thank you.
Thank you for the concerns. I certainly appreciate that. And with a good location like it is, I think there's going to be competing desires. As we can see, there's 2 groups that came forward to request it. It used to be a campground. So while there are a few competing ideas there, I think it's good to explore further what we could do with it from a disc golf or dog park piece. And then as we get rolling with that letter that you had referenced, we can take that into consideration once it actually gets to council and gets to a full design phase.
Member of the public wish to speak to this? Okay. In that case, you get a motion?
Yep. Move to recommend the city manager be authorized to do all things necessary to negotiate and execute a professional service contract with DuBois and King for design services required for the redesign of Wheelock Park Campground into a disc golf course and dog park for an amount not to exceed $29,888, and with funding to come from Project Cost Center 90291.
Second.
Okay, been moved and seconded. Any further discussion by members of the committee? Yes?
Yeah, I just want to say, heeding what the city manager, her caution around this, I feel that by us voting on this tonight, we're giving it the seal of approval, and with the hopes that the council will, so that will no longer be in my mind, it'll no longer be a consideration for something else. It'll be for this. I just want to be clear, because when I feel that that's what she was asking of us, and when I was listening to Councilor Lake, it sounded like it was still a consideration for him, and that concerned me. So I just want to be clear that my vote is in support of this and moving forward. And we're talking about a chunk of change, so I just hope we're on the same page. Thanks.
All right, all in favor?
Thank you. Good evening, committee members. I'm Harry McKelvey. I am the Transportation and Stormwater Operations Manager for the Highway Division of Public Works.
And Corp Blomquist, Public Works Director, Assistant City Manager.
I'm here tonight to request that we sole source a vendor that does, in the past, has done our imprinted crosswalks down in the downtown mall area. They are in need of repair. They are the authorized dealer for this application, and to get this permission from you is gives me the opportunity to bring them in and get this done in a timely manner.
Just curious, so this is for the downtown crosswalks, right?
Correct.
On Main Street. So just with the downtown reconstruction in mind, what happens if we don't do this?
They'll probably remain like they look like today until the different downtown phases take place.
Okay.
To caveat on that, what are we talking timeframe-wise in terms of when that reconstruction is? Is it time enough for this to, if we do this work, it's going to be worn down again by then?
Most likely, if you notice with these particular, there's a couple things have happened over the last couple of years. Usually, the work isn't quite as the high level. We had the construction on Roxbury Street last year, which did a significant amount of damage to the ones up around Central Square. Certainly, right now, I think we're talking 24 for the beginning of the downtown project, and that's, again, depending on phases, that initially is going to be up here. So normally, the wear patterns usually are between 3 to 5 years is when we need to come back in and refreshen just those sections that wear out. So potentially, we may not need to redo this again, because by the time that 3 to 5 years comes into play, downtown will be in a different condition.
The Finance, Organization, and Personnel Committee moves to recommend the City Council authorize the city manager to do all things necessary to waive bidding requirement under Section 2-1336, waiver of requirements for the repair of the downtown imprinted crosswalks.
Second?
Any further discussion by members of the committee? Seeing none, all in favor? No one's opposed.
Good, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, I'll take the victory.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Pleasure to speak with you as always. Tonight, I'm here to talk about City Hall garage project here in the back of the building. And specifically, this is a resolution that would appropriate additional funds for the project. This project had a total appropriation of $52,300 included in the CIP. That number was derived from a report that was prepared in 2018 by a consultant when he evaluated the garage and came up with a list of sort of periodic maintenance items that needed to be addressed. Knowing that pricing has changed since 2018, we pared that list back to what we felt was really the minimum work that needed to be done to prevent additional deterioration. Unfortunately, that didn't pare down enough. It still ended up being over budget by about was $16,200 over the available budget we had. So I'd like to digress a moment, Mr. Chair, if I could, and kind of use that as a segue to talk about more generally some of the things that Councilor Chadbourne brought up with the challenging bidding environment we've been seeing lately. Everybody's aware of pricing concerns right now. We are really seeing that effect in this season's construction bids. I've already been here talking to the committee about the pricing for Winchester Street. That came in significantly over budget. The gate valve project, which in recent years has been kind of a routine, easy peasy project for us. That project this year came in about 50% over budget. The less well-known concerns that we're also dealing with are lead times associated with some materials. That specifically affected the gate valve project in that the valves that are required are, we're being told by the local vendors now that it's 16 weeks from the time you place an order to the time you get your valves. That's true of metal pipe, plastic pipe, the valves, and a few other materials, but it's particularly the metal and the plastic. Just recently, actually yesterday, I also heard that epoxy materials, like were going to be needed for the the Wells Street parking garage. Those are looking at a long lead time now as well. So it's a very challenging situation to begin with, and then on top of that, you add some workforce challenges. You know that everybody is looking for help, and there's just no help to be found. That's contributing to price escalation in the form of, labor rates are going up. Typically, a flagger on a project site, usually the contractor will bid that price in recent years, $25, $22 to $25 has been kind of the normal price for that item. That doesn't mean that the guy standing in the street's getting $25 an hour, but the contractor charges that much to cover his overhead and profit, insurance and whatnot. Recent bids for that line item have been between $35 and $45. So, and in some cases, we're hearing that contractors may need to use uniformed police officers to fill that role because they can't get a guy for even at that higher wage rate. So that's a challenge. Geographically, we're also challenged, and this is not new, by a very limited talent pool of local contractors in the area. What's new is that local talent pool is being pulled in a lot of different directions. The housing market is on fire. I don't know how long that's going to last given the inflation rates going up. But what I know of this year is at least 16 new single-family residential homes being built in Keene. That's the ones that we've already been told about. And that's just new construction that hasn't started yet. So that is pulling a lot of that local talent pool to do the site work and the utilities for those single-family homes. And the other piece of it is the increase in governmental spending, with a lot of money starting to flow out of Washington. We're competing against every other municipality that wants to spend those ARPA and different funds that are coming out. So all that being said, it's been a tough couple of months on the bidding front. We've seen a number of projects like the one we just talked about with Andy that have come in with a single bid. We've also had bids that have come in with no bids, none. Projects that a number of local contractors are qualified to take on. They just decided that they were too busy and weren't interested in. So, and the reason I wanted to talk to you about that tonight is because I think that this is not going to be the last time I'm going to be here asking for additional funds to cover the cost of projects that we had previously planned. Unfortunately, I think it's going to be something that's with us for the next couple of years. We also have talked to the city manager with the next iteration of the CIP, that sort of interim update that we'll do for FY24, needing to have to look at the project budgets and sort of reality check them. That may come in the form of raising the budget in the CIP or possibly reducing scope to fit within the available funding. So, sorry I don't have great news for you tonight, but that's where we're at. So the immediate request, and back on topic here, Resolution 2208 would appropriate an additional $20,000 out of the parking fund's unallocated fund balance. That would allow us to cover the actual bid price and also leave a small contingency. So if the city manager had to approve a small amendment to the contract, we'd have some money to cover that. I think that would cover about a 5.6% change order for the city manager.
So you mentioned that you pared back the project
Yeah.
as it went out in the bid, not.
Before it was bid, yeah, before it was bid.
So my question is, obviously that was done because we figured we only had so much money.
Right.
If we continue to do that, our costs are gonna be there 3 to 4 years from now, a greater amount. So, and I'm just kind of spitballing, I guess. I think as a community, we're gonna have to seriously look at some of those things in the future. Because we were in these positions on some projects because we tried to lowball it in the beginning, and now we've got maintenance costs that might not have been there if they'd been a project.
Yeah, and I certainly appreciate that. The items, the two specific items that were cut from the scope that was originally planned are lighting for the rear stairwell. That was going to be replaced with a new LED fixture. I think there was also some lighting on the underside that we wanted to replace. And the other item was spall repair on the deck surface. A lot of that work was actually done by our city forces a couple of years ago, and they did a fantastic job with it. So we figured, if there's areas that really need to be addressed, we can address that in-house, and we have that skill and ability. The items that we really aren't equipped to do, the expansion joint on the ramp, you can kind of see where it's falling apart. What you don't see is below that expansion joint, water's now leaking into the space below it. The beams are rusted, the bearing pads that they sit on are rusted out and experiencing section loss. So those are the kind of things where, like you're saying, if they're not addressed now, they will lead to more costly repairs in the not-too-distant future.
And this was a case where you only had one bid?
Yep.
And you're comfortable with the contract?
Yeah, this contractor is actually the same contractor that did some repair work on the garage before I started. I want to say maybe 8 or 10 years ago. There was another small structural repair job on the ceiling, some other areas, and they were well qualified.
Move to recommend that Resolution R 2022-08 be adopted.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Further discussion by members of the committee? Seeing none? All in favor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.